So the tiling method is definitely one of my absolute favorite ways of learning how to paint because it so closely resembles inking. And the reason I say this is because as a concept artist for over 8 years professionally in the industry, I had to paint in many, many different styles, from traditional painting styles to photo bashing styles to anything in between. And what I've noticed or witnessed is that because I learned the tiling method, I was more confident in applying any of the other painting styles. And so we'll get into the tiling method right away. And I think one of the founders or like people that really mastered this technique was painters like Norman Rockwell, where he really knew how to use this application to his advantage to create a very efficient way of painting. And I think it stems from being able to ink. That's why I'm going to simultaneously render these two, both in ink and with the tiling method, to sort of illustrate my point. So let's get into it. When we want to render something, we basically want to, one, kill the white of the canvas, and we want to add a volume to our subject matter, and we want to separate light from dark. Now, when we go into digital painting, especially a lot of you beginners that want to learn how to paint and you start digitally, you often get overwhelmed by the unlimited amount of options available to use color, brushes, software, etc. And so you get very confused very fast. What I love about the tiling method is that you just need one brush and opaque paint. That's it. You can limit the colors as much as you want. You can open them up as much as you want. That's a little bit up to you, but you can really limit yourself. Again, what I keep repeating, limitation creates creativity. When I would go and start rendering, let's say this eye with ink, well, I would first start with the areas that I know I'm gonna have a certain type of value range and maybe even stroke or hatching technique. So let's say I would do the inside of the eye. I would maybe have a very narrow strokes like this. In this case, also following the form, and narrow strokes like this. Right, so that's my first render pass. And you see that I've actually created a shape, and I also have a negative shape. Now, the cool thing with the tiling method is exact same thing. I would go in and I would literally lay down a tile shape that I want in a certain region, almost very similar to what a lot of you call cell shading, although cell shading, of course, has sort of the implication that we're really using one shape to add shadow. It's not necessarily what we're doing here. I'm just adding tiles, literally, mosaic tiles, essentially. I think that's even where it comes from, onto the canvas. So that's like my one shape that I have right now. So then I would go in and I would identify another shape and maybe even another type of hatching. So I would say for the upper eyelid, I might do something like this, and I might have a similar stroke on the other side, like that. So I would go in with a value of my choosing. So I know I'm probably gonna have a lighter value. So I'm gonna put that in here and here. It's gonna be a little bit more subtle here, but so I'm putting down this particular shape. Now I'm even thinking for the lower lid, I might have the exact same thing. So I would have the lower lid right here, and that would be like a shape here. So I have this triangular shape here, and maybe even because the lower lid runs across here, I maybe might have a similar shape down there. So again, I would go in and I would create that shape right here. And down here. So again, what I'm doing essentially is I'm killing the white of the canvas, as we call it. All right. Then next up, I would say that I might start rendering the eye. So for me, I'm going to render around the highlight of the eye here. But then for the pupil, I'm going to do fairly narrow hatching to indicate a darker value around the eye. Going into the eye itself, for me, again, one tile shape. Now we might have some shadow on the eyeball itself as well, but it will definitely be lighter than the pupil. So I'm gonna hatch a little bit more sparingly on that side. So again, that represents a shape. So again, I might have that cool gray shape right here, just like I drew it, and over here. So again, I'm not rendering, or I'm not blending. I'm not going for soft edges and hard edges and all. I'm just focused on these shapes that represent a certain value. Of course, follow the form. You don't know how to do that, then you should definitely learn how to draw with form and form manipulation. All of that can be taught for free in our roadmap, so go check it out. Right, then I'm going to continue with the pupil. So again, for me, there's two values that I'm going to do now. I'm going to hatch a bit lighter value on this side. And then for inking's sake, I might leave this side, or I would hatch it maybe in a different way like that. And then I might even just darken this a little bit more, so I have a bit more value range. And then hatch here and here just a bit more. So again, those are two shapes. So I'm gonna add those. That's a shape here. And maybe just a bit of a shape here. And then that might result into a shape like this. So again, it's all shapes. Shape, shape, shapes. Boats, boats, boats. Shape, shape, shapes. All right, then I have one left here. And you see by adding in these shapes, what's actually happening is I'm already creating negative shapes as well. So all I have to do is fill those in. Now I could fill those in two ways. This could be one sort of value, color, or shape. It could also still include multiple. So that could mean that within this, I might hatch like a little bit more, but with a lesser value, let's say like this, right? Like more sporadically, like that. Now, if I do that, that means that this thing that I've created would be another shape here. So it would be, let's say, something like this. And then the negative space, I just fill in with, in this case, my lightest value. Like this, all right? And I'm doing the same here. So again, will all values be correct in the beginning? Definitely not. Doesn't really matter. You have to understand your form, obviously, but it doesn't really matter. You just want to, again, kill the white of the canvas. For the lower lid here, right, we have sort of the shadow sides of that lower lid that I've now filled out. But of course, we're also going to have some value in the middle, because the lower lid, we're gonna see that dark side because it moves away from the light, right? So we're gonna see that. So this might be just a bit darker, right? So we're gonna see that. We're also gonna have the eyebrows here. I'm gonna quickly fill those in. like that. So, but we have that filled in shape for the lower lid, right? So I'm going to include that in here now. And what I really like about this technique is that you start to concern yourself a little bit more with shape design as well. So it's not only about just filling in the canvas with values and just randomly going in there and throwing as much value as you can and just killing the white. It's also about being methodical and more designerly with the things you're putting down. So there's more intent about how you're painting things, or even rendering things, right? Which is what I really like about this method. So we have that, we have that. So I might have to indicate the eyeball sitting into the skin of the eye, going into the tear duct. So that might be a value that I want to include in here, like this. And then into the tear duct, like that. Then I still need a base value for the eyes, which in inking I might not really include. All right, so I'm gonna include some of that value of the top lid, and therefore I might add a bit more value on the other side, just like that. And then I will also include more of a base value for that eye socket, essentially. I might have like a darker value even here, right? This is like where the nose meets sort of the eye socket. So I could exaggerate that with value like this, and I could do the exact same here. Right, these values might be similar to what I have for the upper lid here or for the lower lid in the middle. So I might choose to just include that like this. Put a bit more emphasis on the lower lid like that. So I might have a similar situation here where we basically have a default skin color, and that's like a shape again that I'm just adding here that hasn't been added yet. And so now I have to see basically where am I not really representing form well enough. And I would say here, right, where on the top above the upper eyelid, but essentially has this roundness above your eye, right? So basically because the eyeballs here, there's some muscle here, but it's not really represented well by this shape. So we're gonna add some extra tiling. So we're gonna, basically what we're doing is we're getting the values closer to each other. So we're essentially, we got this value and this value next to each other, which again creates a very like harsh or brute transition between values. So what we're doing is we're adding a shape in between that to soften that transition. Could be even like this, right? So we're softening the transition between these forms or shapes. So that's what I'm doing here, essentially. So I'm trying to really still keep the design in mind. So I'm trying to add nicely designed shapes overall to the painting so that it creates a very nice read. All right, then I could do some eyebrows. I haven't done that yet. So let's get this eyebrow in. All right, I think we could go darker. We could for sure go darker and just go relatively black, actually. All right, there we go. And then for the inking, it's gonna be the exact same thing. We're just gonna give that a bit of color punch. I would with inking, sometimes I would go in and just find other pockets of shadow that I really wanna sort of emphasize. It's a bit of a stylistic choice. Comes from comic book inking. So I can be free with that, however I can do some cross hatching if I want to. It's basically a stylistic choice that I can do, and I can start adding, or in this case, what almost would start happening is that I would start blending these forms together. And you do the exact same thing, or just get these values closer and closer together. So get another shape in between there, so the transition becomes smoother. So again, if I'm like, oh, I need to bring these values just a bit closer again, I might just create a shape here that gives me that. Right, and then I'm gonna get it closer and closer and more subtle till I eventually get to a value range where I really want it to be. Because eventually, if you want to have a nice transition and essentially have realism, right? If you look at my skin, it's not these harsh tiles that you see everywhere. It's not a mosaic. It's very soft, right? It's because of the light, obviously, but also because just if you want to achieve very good realism, it's just about having values that are very close together so that it becomes a very realistic feeling, because that's what our eyes see. But in terms of just having good design and a good, nice and stylistic approach and creating much more confidence when you're painting, I think this is a fantastic, mind-blowing technique. When I first heard about it, for me, this was like a godsend to learn painting, because I no longer had to think about the soft brushes, and my colors weren't getting muddy anymore. My values weren't getting muddy anymore, because I was focused on just putting in these tile shapes, thinking about it, like consciously thinking about it, but it was very close to how you would do inking. And for me, that was a very sort of welcome technique to learn or transition into painting. That's why I'm always saying, learn to draw first, because then you could literally transition into this tile approach. And then it's just all about blending this and you get a very realistic approach. So that's why I think like drawing is such a powerful foundational skill that will serve you in painting or even in sculpting, in anything basically. Right, so that's all I have to say about it. As always, what I advocate for is learn to draw better and everything else will take care of itself. But if you really want a very nice painting technique, I think the tiling method is an absolute godsend. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one.